Alright, we're going to show you the quick and simple process of installing 3-point hitches on Case Ingersoll tractors. This goes for almost any model Case Ingersoll tractor or any of the 3-point hitch models. It's a pretty straightforward, simple process, not very time consuming. This is a customer's tractor. We sold this tractor back in the spring and he wanted to add a 3-point hitch. We're adding the older style J26 hitch, which is a fine hitch. The new hitch, the HH34, is a little heavier duty, fits a few more models a little easier. But I always tell everybody, I haven't really found much that the HH34 will do that the J26 won't. Just the HH34 has a few more nicer features, a little bigger cylinder, a little more capacity, but both are great hitches. Finding 3-point hitches is kind of hard and rare, so definitely don't pass up the J26 if you're looking for a 3-point hitch. We've got a bunch of our own tractors with them, and we put them on a lot of tractors, and we sell a bunch of them. And very, very few people want to upgrade to HH34. Either one works great. So you've got your three-quarter bolt heads here up top, and then you got your two that usually hold on your little triangle hitch. This one's got one of these hitches on it. Just simply remove all 4 bolts. Remember, the longer bolt is on the right side here. That's a direct access into your rear end, so always make sure there's a bolt on there and it's tight, because water and contaminants can get in there. If not, you got 2 bolts. So this tractor had a bagger on it. That's what this bracket here is for, you're seeing. So if you don't have a bagger, your tractor's not going to have this bracket. You're just going to have the 2 bolts here and the 2 bolts here. Alright, so you take your hitch and you set the lip up on here. Now with the J26, it's a direct bolt on. The HH34, depending on what model tractor it's going on, sometimes they've got spacers in the back, angle iron spacers, that you need to put on the top and bottom behind it. But being a J26, this is a direct bolt on. Sometimes it's easier to get these bottom bolts in. So you can set your bolts in here to hold it, and then these are cut oblong, that way you can slide it and adjust it. But get a bolt started here. This one you kind of got to push down because the threads are down below inside the case. It's probably hard to see with my fingers in there, but it's down in there, and now it's catching and threading. So one thing to note, sometimes depending on the size of your bolts that came out of the hitch here, you may have to get a little longer bolt because you're going through the hitch itself. It's not always the case, but sometimes it's the case. So usually if you get one of the bolts on the bottom started too, then it kind of keeps you with everything somewhat lined up. And again, you may have to wiggle the hitch or lift it up or use an alignment pin or something to get everything started. You know, start them by hand and make sure they thread fairly smooth. I don't want to quite say easy because they're big bolts and you got a little bit of weight hanging on them. But you don't want to run them in with the gun if they're not straight. So this one back here can be a little tougher. Sometimes people take the cylinder off or wait to put the cylinder on. Take, you know, those pliers or some kind of pliers and either come in from the side or the top if you got trouble getting it dropped down in the hole and started. And kind of just guide it in here. There's not a ton of room, but you just want to make sure everything's lined up. And that's these stubby Capri sockets are awesome. They're really short, just enough room for the head of the bolt, and they come in handy in a lot of situations. Yep, there you go. It'll fit in there with the extension, and then you may have to actually pick up on the hitch a little bit and wiggle it. Same deal, you don't want to put these in with the impact until you're 100% sure they're straight, so use a hand ratchet or cordless set low. Okay, once you get them all started, then you can go through and tighten them. Make sure you start them first before you tighten them all. Make sure the back of your 3-point hitch is clean, the back of your tractor is clean, so the hitch mounts to the tractor clean and straight. So I like to tighten the top ones first. They're big bolts, you want to get them pretty tight. Torque on them without the extension, and then usually I go back and just retighten the top ones after to make sure the bottom ones are good and tight. All right, so your next step, you're going to be underneath the tractor. You need 2 of these T's. You want the ones with the swivel, the JIC number 5, all 3 sides. This one's obviously a female swivel. You want the 2 with the swivels because otherwise you got to take a bunch of lines off your travel control valve to put the non-swivel T's on, and it's a really pain and not worth it. So get the ones with the swivel if you can. Alright, so now this is where we show you how to connect your T's. So these are your lift ports for your belly cylinder, for your mower deck and plow. Depending on your model, the earlier tractors just got a straight fitting here. These are 45s, but either way the T's will work. So loosen your fittings here. They're going to be 5/8. The back one goes to your bottom of your middle of cylinder, and it will also go to the bottom of your 3-point. The front one goes to the top of the cylinders. Both cylinders are going to be the same. You're just teeing into them. So take your 5/8 wrench and loosen these right up. You're going to lose a little bit of fluid. You shouldn't lose a ton, but make sure your lift valve is in the neutral, not up and down position. Otherwise you'll lose more fluid. To make life easier, I suggest just taking one line off at a time. That way you can lose less fluid and have less of a mess. This one's not moving very much fluid. That's good. It means all the seals are sealing and everything's good and tight. Sometimes these lines will drain quite a bit out though. The other thing you're going to want to do is, not always, but it's easier to do it now than later, is there's a jam nut on this fitting up top where it goes into the valve. Loosen it just enough so you can spin this 45. Because when you're connecting these lines, you're going to need to get them so this connects on here and then your 3-point hitch connects. Same deal with these, just kind of get them threaded on lightly before you tighten everything up. And usually you can get this one on the end the easiest. You may have to, like I said, wiggle this. Sometimes it's easier to actually start it in here. That gives you a little bit more leverage to twist the hose where it needs to be. And again, you just want to get everything kind of hand tight, because everything's got to have a little bit of room to play so the lines all connect and do what they got to do. Otherwise you're going to be fighting everything every step of the way. I always get my T's and front cylinders hooked up first. The back ones usually have a bit of slack in them, the hoses themselves, so you can make things happen if you need to. Where the front ones are got the 90 on them, and they're usually not a lot of extra room on the hose. Again, just loosen up that top fitting a little bit and then spin the fitting. Start it on this end here. If you're having trouble lining things up, especially with these 45s, sometimes they're more of a pain. The straight ones, the T's go right on and everything hooks up. If you loosen up the other end of the hose, it lets it rotate a little bit more. And if you need more play than that, there's usually a 45 fitting on the top of the midlift cylinder. Sometimes if you rotate this, but if you loosen up the hose and get it bending around a little bit, sometimes that's all you need. Other times they just drop right on. It just depends on what hoses and fittings you got, and if they're replaced at the right line and routed the right way, and etc, etc. I think this hose was maybe replaced once, because it's just usually they got a little bit more bend and slack to them that you can do what you got to do. Again, just everything finger tight. You gotta want to pay attention to your hoses and try to keep them off from hitting anything when you do tighten everything up. If you got straight fitting, sometimes it's easier just take these 45s out, put straights in, and put your T's on there, and then connect your. Now we're going to take our cylinder lines. Remember, the back one goes to the bottom of your cylinders, the bottom of your 3-point, and the bottom of your. Again, you want to make sure everything's clean. Wipe it down with paper towels and brake clean. Make sure your fittings are clean, all that good stuff. The back one goes to the bottom cylinders. Just get these hand tight as well, and then we go through and tighten everything up at once. This, you got a little bit of room which direction you want to go, so if you know where you want to route your hoses and keep them together or not, that's up to you. And then this is going to be the one that's coming from the top cylinder of the 3-point hitch, and that goes to the front T. Again, if your hoses were not factory or changed or routed differently, you may have to take the hose off and reroute it. Sometimes you might have to loosen up the ends of these 3-point hitch hoses where they go into the cylinder to get things not twisted and to sit free. You want the hydraulic hoses to not be twisted and have any tension on them. You want them to rest naturally when you tighten them up as best as you can. Sometimes you can't always do that, but the more natural they are, the longer they're going to last, and less chance of rubbing on something and stressing out the hose or the fitting. Alright, now that you got everything on there, you can go a little tighter with getting fittings and stuff. Get these ones snugged up, and still you don't need to tighten them yet. So I usually snug the bottom ones first, but not tighten yet. Just snug the bottom ones so you got to feel where they want to lie. These ones you can see are 9/16. Just happen to be whatever hoses were on this 3-point hitch, and we didn't put those on. And then work your way up with snugging things. And again, watch your lines and make sure they're not sitting on each other or touching anything if you can avoid it at all costs, so they don't rub and wear. Sometimes you can't, and that is what it is. You can wrap some rubber or hose protection on wherever they're hitting something. And now we're up on the swivel on the T. We're snugging up. Again, the tops of the fittings into the valve, the 45s, are still loose. Stubby wrenches help a lot, especially in these situations. Getting the tight spots. Angle wrenches work wonderful too. Service wrenches work well. It just all depends what you got. Service wrenches and angle are probably a little less common in most people's toolboxes. We've got a couple nice sets we use very often, but I figured maybe stubbies are a little bit more common in people's boxes, so that's why we're using this. Show you it can be done pretty easy. You can use a regular wrench most of the time. It's just tough getting in certain spots. Alright, so now that these are all kind of snugged up a little bit, but we got a little play, as you can see. Take a look at your lines, figure out where you want them so they're not rubbing, and start with one and then work onto the next set. So this one here, I'd like to set between the frame here if I can and the power steering diverter valve, priority valve. And so when you start doing this, then we tighten up from the top down. So we're going to tighten up this 5/8 nut on the fitting on the 45 going to the valve. That's just an O-ring seal there, so you don't have to go nuts, but it does have to be snug. Now this line is where we want it for the most part. I'm going to work my way down. This line seems to be pretty clear of everything here. I'm going to position it where I want, and then tighten this swivel on the T up next. Again, you don't want to go nuts, but they need to seal, so just get them good and snug. And the next line I'm going to do is the one going to the 3-point right here. Again, it's clear right now. It's not hitting nothing. I'm happy with where it is. So just pull on it a little bit. You see it came to me a little bit. I'm going to back it off there a little. Alright. That guy's clear on everything. And then now I've got this one. I can still maneuver a little bit if I want, but it's sitting right where I want it. So I'm going to take this one and just tighten it up where it is. Try to hold it there because it's going to want to spin slightly when it starts grabbing. That's it. This one I'm pretty happy with. The line's got a slight twist and tension in it. If you wanted to get that out, if you're really worried about it, if this isn't bad at all, you can just loosen up the swivel on the other end and then retighten it up. But this is nothing to worry about. Then we'll do the same thing with this one. I'm going to go all the way up top where I was. Let's start there. I've got again, make sure your hoses are going to end up where you want them. I got my hand on this one here, keeping it off the frame. This one I'm working with the back of my hand. When they get snug, just remember they're going to twist when you get your last final. You don't want to go too tight with these flares. They will crack or break, but you definitely need to get them snug so they seal. Don't need to go too crazy. Hold this one off the frame. Double check all your hoses are off everything and where you want them. Your fittings and your cylinders are good. If you loosened any of your hoses on your mid cylinder or your 3-point hitch cylinder to get the routing of the hoses correct or take a twist out of them. Just make sure you go back and tighten all that up. Then start your tractor up and check it for leaks. One thing to know with hooking a 3-point hitch up to the Case Ingersolls, because you teed in here, your belly lift cylinder is going to lift your mid and front hydraulics the same time your 3-point hitch go up. So with this factory setup, your front and mid hydraulics go up the same time your 3-point hitch do. Or normally if you engage this lever here, your mower deck would go up, and if you had 3-point hitch, so would your 3-point hitch at the same time. And if you push down, they both would go down at the same time. With the factory setup, that's how it works, and it's kind of inconvenient. We have a hydraulic selector valve kit that we put together, and we'll have a video on that, that isolates your front hydraulics from your mid, or your back hydraulics from your front and mid hydraulics. This is our selector valve kit style 1 location. I'm going to show you what the valve does. So on this tractor, forward controls your forward implement, back controls your 3-point hitch back implement. Our customers love the kit, and it's a pretty quick and simple install, almost as easy as putting this 3-point hitch on. Just a couple more extra steps, but well worth the investment to be able to operate your mid hydraulics separately from your 3-point hitch hydraulics. So now you have a much more versatile tractor with your 3-point hitch, and enjoy it, and take a look for our selector valve kits. We say every 3-point hitch should have one. It makes your 3-point hitch absolutely useful. Otherwise, you can only use your mower or your 3-point hitch or your plow or your 3-point hitch. You got to take one off. It's a pain in the butt. You can't use anything else, and you got to swap things. It's always nice to have one in the front, one in the back for weight and for counterbalance. It opens up a whole different world. This is our selector valve kit style 1 location. Style 3 we have is mounted underneath by the foot platform. So it's the same purpose, just a different location, depending on your tractor model. Find our selector valve kits along with many other products for Case Ingersoll Tractors and many other brands of garden tractors at Case Ingersoll Tractors with an S.com, as well as our eBay store, which is Case Ingersoll Tractors Northeast. But for the best prices and avoid high shipping costs and eBay fees, you can go to CaseIngersollTractors.com. And you can email us at CaseIngersollNE, as in Northeast, NE, at gmail.com. And you can find us on Facebook also at Case Ingersoll Tractors Northeast. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.